You know that sinking feeling when you're like sitting at a loud, overpriced bar on a Tuesday night with an acquaintance you barely even like, just to avoid sitting on your couch alone again?
Oh, yeah, it's rough.
Right. Making friends as an adult often feels like, I don't know, submitting a resume into a void. You relocate for work or your life just naturally accelerates and suddenly you're trying to build a local network from scratch.
Yeah, and you go through that grueling standard protocol.
Exactly. The whole where are you from, what do you do for a living thing. And so often the conversation just stays right there, locked in this superficial purgatory.
Totally.
Lacking the time and energy for that exhausting routine, a lot of us just give up entirely. We let the isolation creep in, maybe rely on workaholism as a coping mechanism, and the opportunities for genuine social interaction just kind of vanish.
It's a really common trap.
It is. So welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are exploring a mobile application called Eugenio.me, basing our discussion on their architectural white paper. Our mission here is to unpack how this platform fundamentally reimagines digital connection, not by trapping you in a dopamine loop, but by using what they call cultural DNA to foster genuine adult connections.
Yeah, and to set the grounded tone right out of the gate,
Mm-hmm.
we really need to clarify what we're looking at here. This is not some hyped-up billion-dollar Silicon Valley startup chasing engagement metrics.
Right. No infinite growth at the expense of user well-being.
Exactly. It's an incredibly thoughtful, mathematically rigorous passion project. And this is key. It was built by a duet of friends who originally created it just for their own personal use.
Just two friends trying to solve a problem.
Right. They simply wanted a way to keep their long-distance friendship alive through shared cultural consumption.
Yeah.
But the mechanics they built just happened to be robust enough that it naturally grew into an ecosystem worth sharing.
I love that. And I want you, the listener, to think about your closest childhood friendships. They weren't built at networking events where everyone handed out business cards, right?
Definitely not.
They were built on the fascination dimension. You experienced the exact same books, the same bizarre animated films, the same video games and music in the exact same sequence at the exact same age.
Yeah, and that shared cultural sequence shapes your entire worldview. It dictates your sense of humor.
Exactly. People who share that dimension just get your references without any explanation. They laugh at the same beats you do. But recreating that dynamic as a busy adult is nearly impossible because modern social tech is almost entirely optimized for retention, not actual connection.
Capturing and monetizing your attention is the entire business model for most apps.
Right. But this duet of friends engineered an antidote. And to understand how it works, we have to look at the three co-equal uses of the platform.
Yeah, the premise is incredibly grounded. Basically, you are what you love. Unlike traditional platforms that force you into a single, rigid box like telling you this is exclusively a professional networking app or this is exclusively a dating app, this ecosystem is deeply flexible.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does that flexibility actually look for the user?
Well, it serves a co-equal trio of legitimate uses, and none of them is the primary one. The user decides their focus on any given day.
So what's the first one?
First, you can use it to maintain a continuous touch point with your existing friends through that shared cultural consumption we mentioned.
Makes sense. And the second?
Second, you can use it to find new local connections for hobbies, clubs, or activities. Finding a soccer buddy or a book club member who already shares your exact cultural reference points.
Oh, that's cool. And the third use?
And third, it can be used for dating for the users who actively choose to use it that way.
The critical distinction here being that none of those three uses is the main event, right?
Right.
The engine just surfaces profound alignment.
Exactly. What you do with that alignment is entirely up to you. Time-saving content discovery, like finding out about a great new album, is just a really powerful side effect that flows from those three pillars.
But if it can be used for dating, I look at the landscape of modern apps and I have to wonder, how does it avoid becoming just another superficial dating app? Like a swipe on photos meat market.
Right, that's the big question. The underlying mechanism there is that the matching engine is emphatically not looking at your face. It's searching for rare statistical overlaps in your taste.
Rare overlaps, like what?
Think of it like inverse frequency in a search engine. If you search the word "the," you get billions of useless results. But if you search the word "xylophone," the results are highly specific.
Oh, I see.
Right. Almost everyone likes mainstream blockbusters. If you and another user both rate a massive superhero movie highly, that tells the system absolutely nothing about your unique soul. It's just mainstream noise.
But if you both rate, like, an obscure 1990s Czech animated film highly.
Exactly. The math recognizes an extraordinarily rare coincidence. The algorithm assigns massive weight to that specific overlap.
And it even matches people based on mutual dislike, which feels so incredibly human to me.
It totally is. Psychology shows we bond just as powerfully over the things we aggressively avoid.
Right. Like, if you both consistently dismiss reality TV shows or certain subgenres of pop music, the system tracks that pattern. It creates this organic, instant icebreaker based on shared skepticism.
It's a great conversation starter.
But a matching engine looking for deck statistical overlaps is completely useless if the data feeding it is garbage. And human beings are notoriously lazy raters.
Oh, extremely lazy.
Yeah, if you look at standard platforms, everything collapses into a fuzzy 4.1 star average because people just default to middle-of-the-road scores.
Yeah.
So how does this app force users to give pristine data?
They completely redesigned the rating architecture to eliminate that noise. Standard 5-star systems, or 1 to 10 scales, basically allow users to hide. So
Yeah.
Eugenio.me uses a strict, asymmetric 1 to 4 rating scale.
A 1 to 4 scale. That's unusual.
It is, but the philosophical framing here is vital. They didn't just remove a neutral middle, they explicitly removed the coward's fence between negative and positive.
I love that phrase. It's like taking a stance. You can't just shrug your shoulders and give a movie a 5 out of 10 to avoid having an actual opinion. You have to decide if it was worth your time.
Exactly. Let's look at the specific gradations because the language they use is incredibly deliberate.
Right. Lay them out for us.
Okay, so a 1 means you wouldn't recommend it and wouldn't repeat the experience. That is your single, decisive negative anchor.
Got it. And a 2.
A 2 means you don't regret consuming it, but it didn't really add anything to your life.
Like it was just fine.
Yeah. Then a 3 means you genuinely enjoyed it and would recommend it in the right context. And finally, a 4 means it truly resonated. You'd recommend it broadly or re-experience it.
But wait, why 3 positive options and only 1 negative?
The asymmetry is rooted in behavioral reality. Because people naturally self-select what they consume like, you generally don't finish a 20-hour RPG if you hate it. The vast majority of completed and rated items naturally land in positive territory.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Right. So 3 positive gradations are highly useful for capturing nuance, while 1 decisive negative is entirely sufficient. And because the system never averages these ratings into a generic global score, it creates a true collective mind.
So when a recommendation surfaces from your matched mates, you see their actual individual lossless rating.
Exactly. No fuzzy averages.
If my closest cultural match, someone who shares my exact obsessive taste in, say, ambient music and dystopian sci-fi rates a new book of 4, that carries infinitely more weight than a procedural algorithm.
Infinitely more.
But this raises a massive user experience hurdle. If the engine requires all this specific data, how do you get users to rate hundreds of movies, books, and games without it feeling like tedious homework?
The solution is found in how the app redefines the concept of swiping. Now, the word carries a ton of toxic baggage in the app world, so we need to be very precise here.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks.
Yeah, so there are 2 strictly distinct swipe contexts in this ecosystem. Context 1 is exclusively for content rating. The default input for rating is just fast, plain buttons. But layered on top of that is a swipe by comparison mode designed for rapid batch flow.
Swipe by comparison, how does that work?
It compares a new item against an anchor item you have already rated. Round 1 is a simple like or dislike on the new item. If you like it, round 2 asks you to situate it relative to that anchor. Do you love it more, about the same, or less?
I look at this and see the exact same neurological principle at play during an eye exam at the optometrist.
Oh, it's a perfect analogy.
You're sitting in the chair and the doctor flips the lenses. Is lens 1 better or lens 2? You don't have to rate lens 1 on an absolute scale of 1 to 100 in a vacuum, which causes immense cognitive fatigue.
Right, you just have to say if it's clearer than the alternative.
Human brains are terrible at assigning absolute scores out of nowhere, but we are brilliant at relative comparison. And to be crystal clear, in this first context, the content rating, there are no human faces involved whatsoever. You are swiping on movie posters and book covers.
Exactly. No faces there. Now, context 2 is the only place where you swipe on a face, and this is exclusively for mate proposal acceptance.
Okay, so this is where the faces come in.
Yes, but you only see candidates the algorithm has already mathematically vetted as strong cultural and behavioral matches. A swipe right means add to my mates, and a swipe left means temporarily skip this proposal.
So you're not rating someone's physical attractiveness in a vacuum like a traditional dating app.
Not at all. You are simply confirming or deferring a candidate that the system has already vouched for based on deep underlying compatibility.
Hold on, though. The system has mathematically vetted these mates based on taste. But how do we know the person on the screen is actually who they say they are?
That's a huge issue today.
Right. In an era of AI-generated portraits and heavily curated 10-year-old photos pulled from a camera roll, trust is the single biggest barrier to digital connection. And the white paper mentions the app enforces absolute trust. How do they actually do that without being creepy?
It ties into their absolute rule for trust. The liveness selfie is the only way to set a profile photo. Uploading from your gallery is blocked entirely.
Wow, blocked entirely, which means no meticulously perfectly lit vacation photos from 5 years ago when you were 10 pounds lighter.
Nope.
That is a massive friction point for user adoption.
Yeah.
People are incredibly attached to their curated digital presentation.
It is undeniable friction. But the core philosophy of the platform is that eliminating the anxiety of deception, the fear of catfishing, is fundamentally worth that friction.
By forcing everyone to be brutally authentic from day one.
Exactly. It shifts the psychological focus entirely away from superficial presentation and toward genuine compatibility.
But what if someone just refuses to take a selfie right away? Do they just look like a gray ghost silhouette?
No, and this is really clever. If a user hasn't taken their live selfie yet, the system refuses to let them upload a fake photo, but it doesn't show a blank placeholder either. Instead, it generates a visual avatar derived exclusively from their psychological test results.
That's actually amazing. But that brings up a logistical question. If I am the very first person in my city to download the app, don't I just log into a desolate, empty room?
The classic cold start problem.
Yeah, if the network relies on real people uploading pristine data, how does a new user bootstrap their profile before their local network populates?
They solve the cold start problem with system-generated community feeds. But crucially, these are explicitly labeled. They are not fake people or bot profiles designed to trick you.
Okay, that's an important distinction. Nobody wants to be talking to a bot.
Right. They are global aggregations of the most popular and recently rated content across the entire worldwide network. So from minute one, you have a dynamic, engaging pipeline of movies, games, books, and music to start rating.
So it immediately bootstraps your rating pipeline so the algorithm can start learning your specific tastes while your local human network grows.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's say the ecosystem is working perfectly. You share a deeply specific taste in movies, the algorithm has matched you, and you know they are a verified real person because of the live selfie.
Okay, scenario set.
But what happens when you actually meet for coffee? Sharing a favorite book doesn't guarantee you won't find their personality entirely grating. Usually we rely on text bios to filter for this, but text bios are basically fictional PR campaigns.
Utterly useless noise. Everyone claims they love to travel and laugh with friends.
Exactly. So how does Eugenio.me handle this?
Text bios are aspirational copy about who people wish they were on their best day. To solve this, they remove text bios entirely. In their place, they use the Discover engine.
The Discover engine? What is that?
It's a fast, forced choice behavioral assessment kept consistent with the rest of the UX by also being swipe-driven. It presents 30 everyday micro-scenario trade-offs.
I look at this forced choice design, like having to choose between two different but equally delicious desserts.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, if you ask me to choose between a rich chocolate lava cake and a bright lemon tart, neither answer is wrong or socially unacceptable. But the dessert you instinctively reach for tells me a lot about your actual palate. This app does the same thing for social behavior, right?
The brilliance is in removing the right answer bias that plagues corporate personality tests. You aren't choosing between, I am a fantastic listener, and I scream at service workers.
Right. Obviously, everyone picks the listener.
Exactly. Instead, you might be asked to choose between, I instinctively lower the tension in a room, versus I instinctively move things toward a clear process. Both are highly positive, valid ways of operating in the world.
And the system tracks that to categorize you.
Yes, the results categorize you into one of 64 distinct behavioral avatars. It gives you and your potential mates a literal mathematical read on your social rhythm before you ever commit to meeting up.
It also reports a polarization metric, measuring how decisively you lean toward certain traits. What fascinates me is that it's honest by design.
Honest how?
Like, Weak polarization is transparently reported as weak polarization. It doesn't fabricate false precision just to give you a definitive, punchy label.
Yeah.
If you are genuinely middle of the spectrum and adaptable, it surfaces that nuance publicly.
And looking ahead to their planned future roadmap, they intend to use on-device AI, again, ensuring your data never leaves your phone, to add AI bioenrichment.
What would that do?
These would be short, individualized profile nuances generated based on your cultural DNA, just to add texture and flavor to your profile. The critical safeguard is that this won't influence the core matching algorithm itself. It's simply a narrative layer.
Okay, so we have all of this incredible engineering, the pristine data, the liveness verification, the on-device processing, which requires immense resources.
Oh, absolutely.
We have a platform deliberately engineered to avoid dopamine loops that refuses to sell your data and removes the infinite scroll, which raises the elephant in the room. How do these two friends actually keep the servers running without eventually turning the user into the product?
Right. Well, the business model relies on a highly accessible micro-subscription, but the genius is how it's secured by hard-coded operational constraints.
What kind of constraints?
Because privacy is a hard line, your data is never sold to data brokers. The architecture strictly limits the maximum number of active connections and accessible feed items based on your tier.
Wait, that sounds incredibly counterintuitive. Social media has spent 15 years training us to mindlessly hoard connections, to view massive follower counts as a direct metric of our social worth. Why would a platform deliberately cap how many friends you can have?
To force a change in user behavior. By treating digital connections as a scarce resource, Eugenio.me forces you to curate your network deliberately. If you hit your limit, and you find a new person who is an incredibly superior match, you actually have to unfollow a weaker existing connection to make room for them. They want you to maintain a highly curated circle of your absolute best mates.
Breaking that hoarding habit is going to feel jarring for a lot of people, but it makes perfect sense for genuine connection. But what if you don't want to pay the subscription?
To mitigate those limits, for free tier users, they built in an incredibly smart organic growth loop. If you hit your connection cap, you can use a built-in email protocol to invite a real-world friend to the app.
And what does that do?
When that invited contact joins, the backend intelligently waives the tier limit strictly for that specific relationship. You bypass the cap, the platform gets a verified user at zero acquisition cost, and the network grows through authentic friendships.
That is brilliant. It creates an ecosystem where growth is tied to genuine utility.
Definitely. And looking at the rest of their roadmap, they are planning a feature called gamified, AI-mediated light messaging.
Light messaging.
This is vital to understand correctly. It is a deliberately constrained screening layer, not a full chat app meant to keep you staring at your screen.
Well, the anxiety of the very first message is often paralyzing. I assume this uses the shared cultural ground to generate the first few icebreakers.
Exactly the function. It keeps the interaction low pressure. Once you establish a rapport, they are planning a secure, mutual contact sharing system that requires double opt-in, allowing you to move the conversation to text or a phone call.
I also read the roadmap includes web and native iOS platforms and these highly anticipated local activity beacons.
The beacons are great.
I love the concept of the activity beacon. If I just want to grab a beer or see a movie tonight, but I don't want to blast my precise GPS coordinates to the whole world, the beacon lets my curated circle of vetted mates know I'm free, without turning me into a blip on a public radar.
Exactly. Everything is deliberately designed to limit your time staring at the application and push you toward real-world physical connection.
So, what does this all mean? Let's briefly recap the journey we've taken today. We're looking at a deeply grounded passion project built by a duet of friends that blossomed into an ecosystem serving existing friends, new local connections, and dating equally.
A really remarkable trio of uses.
It bypasses the superficiality of modern networking by forcing honesty through a 1-to-4 rating scale, strict liveness selfies, and real behavioral trade-offs.
And I want to leave the listeners with a final provocative thought pulled directly from the philosophical core of their white paper.
Lay it on us.
Think critically about the digital gates in your life. Many social platforms today implement mutual matching as a protective gate. Two people have to both opt in before they can contact each other.
Right, to protect users from an avalanche of unvetted messages.
But then, many of those exact same platforms turn around and sell paid users a premium feature to bypass that gate. Pay enough money, and you can jump the line and message anyone, vetted or not.
Which completely invalidates the supposed safety of the gate.
It forces you to ask, what is the platform actually optimizing for? When the gate that supposedly protects users is itself available for purchase, the gate's real function is no longer protection. Its function is monetization.
Wow. The user's attention is the product being protected, only to be sold to the highest bidder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eugenio.me takes the absolute opposite stance. The curated mates list is hard-capped. Money cannot buy access to people who have an independently, mathematically signaled compatibility with your cultural DNA.
It really makes you evaluate the digital infrastructure you interact with every single day. Are those gates actually protecting your peace, or are they just monetizing your presence? We started this deep dive talking about the exhausting, superficial chore of making adult friends and how it feels like submitting a resume to a void.
Exhausting.
Maybe the solution isn't to write a better, more polished resume. Maybe the solution is finding the people who are already reading the exact same books, laughing at the exact same scenes, and living inside your exact fascination dimension. Something to think about. Till next time.